What is evolution? Let's start with the common misconceptions. Firstly, evolution causes an organism to improve. Life for that organism has gotten better over time. Secondly, evolution is not observable or testable. Thirdly, gaps in fossil record disprove evolution. Fourthly, natural selection involves an organism trying to adapt. And finally, natural selection is the only way a population can change over time. Before we can disprove these misconceptions, we need to look at the basics. Evolution is the change in a population of a species over time. Evolution can be measured as a change in certain heritable traits in population over many generations. Genetic variation. The variation of genetic material, or DNA, within and among populations of a species. Population is defined as a group of individuals that belong to the same species capable of interbreeding and producing offspring. Now, how does this happen? Well, it happens through natural selection, genetic drift, which encompasses the bottleneck effect and founder effect, and finally, mutations. Let's start with natural selection. Natural selection, a theory given by Charles Darwin, states that resources are limited. There is competition for those resources and a struggle for survival. There is a variation of heritable traits among members of a population. Organisms are best suited or adapted to their environment will survive and reproduce. Unequal reproduction between suited and unsuited organisms will eventually cause a gradual change in a population, with characteristics favorable to that particular environment, accumulating over the generations. And finally, it does not involve organisms trying to evolve. Natural selection, as quoted by University of California at Berkeley, states, natural selection leads to adaptation, but the process doesn't involve trying. Natural selection involves genetic variation and selection among variants present in a population. Either an individual has genes that are good enough to survive and reproduce, or it does not, but it can't get the right genes by just trying. If we look at the tiger on the bottom left, we can see that the stripes are fit to the environment that the tiger's located in. If we look at the top right, we can see that the tiger has black and white stripes. This tiger's skin is perfectly fit to its environment because, as we can see in the background, there's snow and trees. And finally, on the top left, we can see birds of various beaks. These different beaks are best suited to their environments because the smaller seeds will come easily to the birds with the smaller beaks, whereas the birds with bigger beaks will be able to eat the bigger seeds due to their large beaks. Now let's look at genetic drift. Genetic drift is the random change in allele frequency. We can first look at the bottleneck effect. Basically, the bottleneck effect states that results from an event or disaster that drastically reduce a population size. Next, let's look at the founder's effect. It's the random change in gene pool due to migration of small group of population. A few individuals start a new population. Now, let's look at mutations. Mutations involve the changing of the structure of a gene, resulting in a variant form that may be transmitted to subsequent generations. Mutations are usually caused by the alteration of single base units in DNA, adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, or the deletion, insertion, or rearrangement of larger sections of genes or chromosomes. As you can see, this bug is a perfect example of a genetic mutation because the mutation caused the bug to have an extra set of wings. Now, let's look at the misconception that gaps in fossil record disprove evolution. The fact that some transitional fossils are not preserved does not disprove evolution. Evolutionary biologists do not expect that all transitional forms will be found, and realize that many species leave no fossils at all. And finally, let's look at the last misconception. Evolution is not observable or testable. Evolution is observable and testable. The misconception here is that science is limited to controlled experiments that are conducted in laboratories by people with white lab coats. Actually, much of science is accomplished by gathering evidence from the real world and inferring how things work.